of Nehemiah. It's nice to be with you here again this evening. And it seems like as soon as Christmas is over, ever since I've been pastoring, your mind automatically begins to move toward the new year, and you're kind of closing down this year, 2023, and you're thinking about 2024. You try to get your calendar together, and you begin thinking about things and messages that you want to try to encourage people. You know, the new birth is the ultimate new start, right? Old things are passed away, behold, all things are coming new, you know. And you're a new creature walking the newness of life that you have. But it's nice how the Lord gives us kind of a new year. We celebrate this new year, and it almost always feels like kind of like a fresh start. It's kind of like a little bit of a shot in the arm. You can kind of put the last year to bed with whatever all, things that maybe you had to go through, and you get to look at a new year and everything's fresh, and there's some encouraging things about that, and you begin to think about messages along those lines. And so I wanted to share one with you as we've been at our church been going through Nehemiah. I think there's one here that is something I know my mind keeps going back to, Nehemiah chapter 4. So if you turn there, Nehemiah chapter 4. Sorry for not giving you the chapter. We're just going to look at the first 6 verses here. But we know here, as you kind of go through the book of Nehemiah, we know Nehemiah had a burden for his city and his people there, and the Lord allowed him to return with the blessing of the king. And chapter 3 tells about the work at the wall and how the work got begun. And, chapter 3 is one of those chapters of the Bible that's repetitive, a lot of names, things like that. But there's a lot of encouragement there. If you look at how they did the work, the people all bought in. They were all working together. They were all working hard. You could look to your left or to your right. As you labor, people were laboring to your left and to your right. And so they were working hard simultaneously on the wall. Not like a Baptist church. Baptist church, you got a group of people that goes around and does everything. That's kind of how most Baptist churches I know. They have a core of people who go around and do everything. Some people may help from time to time if they like what we're doing, or if it's convenient for them. But Nehemiah, this group during this time, they were unique in that they were all committed to working together, but all at the same time. They're working on a section, and everybody's working together, and they could encourage each other by looking to the right and looking to the left, and seeing their brother and laboring right along beside them. But we got to know this, is that with a certainty, anytime you're doing a work for God, there's going to be an attack to that work in some shape or form. The devil has many wiles that he can use. And I think chapter 4, we begin to see some of these attacks. In other words, there are many attacks that you see in the book of Nehemiah that the devil throws at the people of God who are engaged in the work of God to try to get the work of God hindered or to cease. And I think the devil threw his best first, if I could say it that way. I think he threw his best attack first. And that's what we want to look at here tonight. And so if you read these chapters with me, it says, "But it came to pass that when Sanballat heard that we builded the wall, he was wroth, and took great indignation and mocked the Jews. And he spake before his brethren and the army of army of Samaria, and said, What do these feeble Jews? Will they fortify themselves? Will they sacrifice? Will they make an end in a day? Will they revive the stones out of the heaps of the rubbish which are burned? Now Tobiah the Ammonite was by him, and he said, Even that which they build, if a fox go up, he shall even break down their stone wall. Nehemiah responds in verse 4, and he says, Hear, O our God, for we are despised. Turn their reproach upon their own head, and give them for a prey in the land of captivity, and cover not their iniquity, and let not their sin be blotted out from before thee, for they have provoked thee to anger before the builders. So we built the wall, and all the wall was joined together unto the half thereof, for the people had a mind to work. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, as we look at this passage here in Nehemiah, and we see this attack that was launched to try to hinder the work of God that was being done on the wall during this time, Lord, I pray that you'd help us to be able to understand that we will face this same attack many times in our lives, many times over this next year. And Lord, I pray that you'd help us to be able to identify what this attack looks like and how we should biblically respond to it so that we can be more than overcomers, knowing that it's our faith that gives us the victory that overcomes. And we'll thank you for what you do, Lord. We thank you for the hope that we have in our Savior, Jesus Christ, and all the rich blessings we have in heavenly places in him. For it's in his name we ask these things. Amen. The attacks and problems that are thrown at us, the attacks and problems that were thrown at the children of Israel during this time, we have to understand that these attacks, again, kind of like I said, attacks are going to be a natural part of doing the work of God. Yeah. But at the same time, we can overcome these attacks and problems by faith-based action. I think that's important. Nehemiah, one of the things you see in Nehemiah is you see faith-based action all the time in Nehemiah. Nehemiah prays, but then he goes to the king. Nehemiah prays, and they build the wall. Nehemiah prays, and they arm themselves. It's faith-based action. There's faith-based action all over the place in Nehemiah. And that's what we really need. A lot of times we're the other way around. We jump in and do action without faith. And then we come praying to God saying, God, help me. And what did I do? All action isn't faith-based action. But Nehemiah, as a leader, he constantly seemed to employ what I would call faith-based action. He went to God first, and he stepped out and did by faith what God would have him to do. And so this first attack really here was an attempt, I believe, to discourage the people in the work. And so that's what I'm going to talk about here tonight, is this idea of the attack of discouragement. Discouragement is a major issue for those who are serving, or at least striving to serve the Lord. If you're striving to serve the Lord, you are going to face discouragement. Yes. Now, there's another attack that comes in this passage. So there's the two attacks, to me, there's two attacks in Nehemiah chapter 4. The first attack is a discouragement, and the second attack is fear. Both of them are launched by the enemy, but I don't know. I was thinking about this beforehand today, and I was thinking, any of you guys old enough to remember this old TV show, The A-Team? Like Mr. T and, like that, It always seemed like, like the A-Team, they'd find the bad guys, and the bad guys would have like explosives or something, and they'd take a fuse or they'd take gunpowder and run it out, and all they'd do is light the match. And that fuse or that gunpowder would run off into the enemy or the bad guy's stash of explosives, and the bad guys would get blown up or foiled by their own explosives. All the A-Team did was lit the fuse. Well, this is kind of like this in reverse. When the devil attacks, a lot of times it's kind of like that. What's going to destroy us, what's going to hinder us is already in us. It's our flesh. We have a weak flesh. We have a flesh that's prone to discouragement. We have a flesh that's prone to fear, and many times all our adversaries have to do is light the proverbial fuse and let it run, and we self-explode or self-implode, or how you want to look at it. And that's the way I look at this. See, here they are. How are they they're lighting the fuse of discouragement by mocking them. They're openly, publicly mocking the Jews in the work. And that's their way of kind of trying to light the fuse to discourage them in the work. When that doesn't work, they move to fear. And they light the fuse of fear by intimidating them. We're going to attack you. And they start spreading rumors. When you least expect it, we're going to be upon you. There's nothing you can do. We're going to kill you and attack you. And that's where Nehemiah comes along and arms the people, and they figure out a way to work and to defend themselves at the same time. And so they overcome fear through faith-based action. They overcome discouragement through faith-based action. But you see, both of these things are two of Satan's most effective tools in hindering the work of God. If he can get God's people discouraged, or he can get God's people fearful, the work will come to a stop. Yes. And we have to understand this. We probably recognize fear easier. We probably fear more. But discouragement is the main one. I face discouragement probably every week I have ministry in some form or another. I battle with discouragement all the time. Yeah. And I'm sure your pastor does too. I don't always battle with fear. No. I don't have something that causes me to fear every week, but I usually have something that causes me to be discouraged every week. And it varies, but we face discouragement so much more than we face any other thing, and discouragement is an effective tool. I bet you there's more believers out of ministry or hindered in ministry because of discouragement than anything else. I bet there's more pastors that quit the ministry, not because they're afraid, but because they're discouraged. Yeah. This next year, you are going to face discouragement in some shape or form. Now, not everything that discourages us is necessarily faith-hindering or faith-focused discouragement. I'm a Mountaineer alumni. I forgot they were even playing today. I have no idea whether they're winning or losing. Praise God, I don't have to worry about whether they discourage me or not. But if they're losing right now, and I was watching the game or something at home, I might be discouraged, by the way they're playing or something like that. That's not faith-based discouragement. It's discouragement, but it's not faith. That doesn't hinder my faith. But there's plenty of things that come along that do hinder your faith or do hinder a work in the ministry. It tries to discourage you in the work, hinder you in the work. And so we need to recognize this is one of the devil's main attacks. I'm trying to bring a little bit more out about this as we go through this passage. But discouragement is what I'm talking to you about. We're closing down this year. I bet you face discouragement this year. We're getting ready to start a new year. I guarantee you're going to face discouragement. That's right. What are you going to do when you face it, though? That's the question. It's not if you're going to get discouraged. It's not if you get, it's when you get discouraged. What are you going to do? How are you going to respond? How am I going to respond? Am I going to allow that discouragement to hinder me in serving God the way I should? So what is the meaning of discouragement? The meaning of discouragement gives the idea of depriving one of courage, discourage. That word courage is in discourage, right? Depriving one of courage, depriving one of zeal, to deprive somebody of their desire, to obstruct somebody by opposing them or by difficulty. And that's basically the general idea of discouragement, is to, rob somebody or deprive somebody of their desire to do something. And so I think that's what's going on here. First of all, if they can take the desire from the people to build the wall, the work on the wall will come to a grinding halt. Now, God's people, particularly the children of Israel, have a history of being discouraged. And we could think about the children of Israel, when God brought them out of Egypt, for example, in Numbers 21. We're not going to take time to turn to these passages. I'm just going to make reference. If you're writing notes down, you can. But Numbers 21, verses 4 and 5, the children of Israel were discouraged because of the way. In Numbers 37, verses 7 through 9, when they were getting ready to enter the land, remember the 2.5 tribes wanted their inheritance on the Trans-Jordan side, on the eastern side of the Jordan River. And remember, when they were going into the land to conquer, basically they needed to be challenged. Are you just going to sit here while your brethren go fight? Are you going to discourage your brethren like that? You've got your inheritance. You're not going to go help. You're not going to cross the Jordan and help your brothers take their inheritance. You're just going to sit here and do nothing while your brothers, do this. And he warns them about discouraging their brethren there. And then, of course, we see that they were discouraged when the 12 spies went into the promised land the first time. 10 of them came back. We can't win, and we can't take them. They're too big and everything else. And they discouraged the hearts of the people. That's why they didn't go in the first time. And so you can read through your Old Testament, particularly with the children of Israel, and see how what hindered them so many times was discouragement. Yes. And so there's a history of discouragement working in the hearts of God's people. Can you see discouragement in Elijah's life? Yeah. Can you see discouragement in Jonah's life? I mean, you can see people go through this. Can you just see discouragement in Peter's life after he denied the Lord thrice and went back fishing? What servant of God isn't prone to or hasn't been affected by discouragement in their life and felt like they were going to quit? Jeremiah tried, didn't he? That's it. I'm not speaking another word. And yet, couldn't do that either, could he? And so, discouragement has a history in Scripture among God's people doing God's work and hindering God's people from doing God's work. I want to share something interesting with you. If you hold your place there in Nehemiah, this is one place in the New Testament, and I think it's an interesting thing here to help us combat discouragement in our life. Notice in Colossians 3:21, the book of Colossians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, chapter 3. This is kind of obscure, but I want you to maybe see something that I noticed here. Does this need to be right up here, Pastor? Does it need to be right here? Or can I put it right? Okay, all right. Colossians 3:21. What's it say? Fathers, provoke not your children to anger, lest they be what? Discouraged. So here's a command. Here's a command about discouragement. Earthly fathers are not supposed to provoke their children to anger, lest they be discouraged. Now, this is the perfect heavenly Father telling earthly fathers, don't you provoke your own children to anger or to wrath, lest they be discouraged. In other words, the instructions that our heavenly Father gives to us as earthly fathers are patterned after himself, aren't they? Yes. God doesn't want you discouraged, is what I'm trying to tell you. Yes. Whatever God allows in your life, he's not doing it to discourage you. That's right. Can you get that? God may take you through some valleys. You may face some problems. You may face some opposition. God may allow some things in your life, but he's not doing it to discourage you. Why? Because he tells earthly fathers, don't provoke your children in such a way that it results in their discouragement. So your heavenly Father, whatever you're going through in your life, whatever God allows in your life, you can know this, that your heavenly Father is not doing it to provoke you to discouragement. He may be trying to mature you. He may be trying to stretch you and grow you. And it's like the children of Israel. They were discouraged in the way. Why? Because God took them through the wilderness, didn't he? He didn't take them right from Egypt into the promised land. He took them kind of the long way, didn't he? Because they were going from slavery. And he knew that it was best for them to learn to face some adversity and learn to trust him. And yet, they looked at that as discouragement. They were discouraged because of the way. God wasn't doing that to discourage them. God was doing it to help them. Whatever God's allowing in your life, he's doing that to help you, not discourage you. And so you have this dynamic when it comes to discouragement too. I'll bring this out right here as well. You know, God does discourage us from sin. God wants to discourage us from sin. But God at the same time doesn't want to discourage us in general. Yes. The problem is that discouragement doesn't play on a level playing field. And we'll see this here in a little bit. Because of the fall, because of our flesh, it's interesting. If you try to discourage somebody from sin, you know what they'll do? engage in it. That's our nature, right? You try to discourage people from sin, what do? You can't discourage people from sin. It's hard to discourage people from sin. But you've tried to discourage them from something right. In other words, we can be discouraged from doing right, but it's hard to discourage somebody from doing wrong. They'll continue to do the wrong. I'll try to show this to you here later, maybe explain it a little bit better later here. But discouragement is one of these things that it doesn't play on a level playing field. Discouragement seems to only affect the things that involve doing right, or doing God's will, or doing God's work. And so whatever's going on in your life, God's not giving you the spirit of fear. God's not trying to discourage you in what he's allowing you to go through. He's trying to help you. So as we move through, we can turn back here to Nehemiah chapter 4. We saw Sanballat comes along and he hears that they're building the wall. Now, Sanballat's already taken a swipe at them, tried to hinder them from building the wall, but they started building anyway, and they're off to a good start. And so the news gets to Sanballat that they're building the wall. And so he takes his second shot here, which I think is the best shot that he's trying to take. Now, he took great indignation and mocked the Jews. So these next things that we're going to see here, these attacks of discouragement, there's about 6 things here, 6 questions. Remember, the context of these are they're all meant to mock the Jews. And when you mock somebody, what are you trying to do? In other words, if you pick on somebody, if you mock them, if you tease them, if you ridicule them, what are you doing? Are you encouraging them or discouraging them? Yeah. And sometimes people use this tactic of mocking and ridicule and things like that. Sometimes they do it just because they're downright mean. Yeah. And there's no rhyme to their reason. Yeah. But many times people mock because they're afraid. There's something that you're doing that they don't like or they're afraid of. That's right. And they're gonna mock you about it, hoping that you'll stop or change. And that's with Sanballat. Sanballat has already tried to stop them from building. They're building. He wants them to stop. He's afraid of what the Jews are doing. He has some type of fear. And so these things are attacks. They're not just doing it because they're mean that way, though they might be bent that way. These are intentional. They're meant to discourage or put down what the Jews are doing. And so notice Sanballat, he speaks this publicly before his brethren, and before the army of Samaria. And he gives these 6 questions. What do these feeble Jews? That's 1. Will they fortify themselves? That's 2. Will they sacrifice? That's 3. Will they make an end in a day? That's 4. Will they revive the stones out of the heaps of the rubbish which are burned? That's 5. And then Tobiah chimes in here in verse 3 and says, even that which they build, if a fox go up on it, or up, he shall even break down their stone wall. That's 6. So this is the attacks of discouragement, these mocking attacks. Listen, these attacks that relate to discouragement are usually involve some type of lie. They usually involve some type of lie about yourself, or some type of lie about your circumstances, or some type of lie about God. But when the devil uses and attacks you with discouragement, I guarantee you he's using some type of lie. Not like any good lie, there's an element of truth to all these things, by the way. There's an element of truth, but in the end, he's misapplying these things, so in the end, it's a lie. He's using deception to try to discourage you. And it's important to see through that. The devil's a deceiver. He's the father of lies. He was a liar from the beginning. You know what's interesting to me is whenever Jesus comes and to set up his 1,000-year reign and at the end of the tribulation to set up his 1,000-year kingdom. He binds Satan and throws him in the pit, right? That he should do what? Deceive the nations no more, right? And after the devil's bound 1,000 years and he's let out after 1,000 years, what's the first thing he does when he gets out? He deceives. That's his main deal. He's a deceiver. And so the devil attacks us through deceiving us about ourselves, God, our circumstances. And you can really see that in these questions. So notice the first question. This question about what do these feeble Jews, these feeble Jews, he's questioning their ability. He's causing them to question their ability. You weak Jews. And they were. You remember the beginning of the book of Nehemiah? People came from Jerusalem. Nehemiah said, hey, how are things there? And he got the report, and he was burdened because the people weren't doing so good. The city wasn't doing so good. Things weren't so great. That's why he was burdened in the first place to go and help, to build this wall and to make things better. They were feeble compared to the Persians, maybe compared to some of the other people and their neighbors. They were to a degree a feeble people. They weren't doing well. And this is what Sanballat points out about them. You're a feeble people. What are you doing, you weak people? And he's questioning their ability, but there's a lie there, isn't there? In other words, the deception is that in every one of these statements, there's the element of truth, but what Sanballat is doing is leaving God out of the equation. Yes. In other words, he's getting to look at themselves or their life or their circumstance without God involved in the equation. Mm-hmm. God's involvement in the equation changes everything. Yes. It changes everything. They were weak. But they're there. Why are they there? Are they there? Whose will are they there in? Their own? No, they're there in God's will. Are they there doing their own work? No, they're doing God's work. And so if you're doing God's will and God's work God's way, you have his enablement, no matter how weak you are, no matter how feeble you are. And so many times the devil uses this in the lives of individual believers or even churches. Oh, we're a small church, we can't. Jesus had a little flock. Jesus didn't have a mega church, he had a little flock. And that little flock got to start in Jerusalem, turned the world upside down. And yet, we still look at it this way. Individual Christian lives. When there's ministry to be done, most Christians start out with the words, I can't. And then you ask them their life verse, and they say, I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me. Why don't you help in the nursery? I can't. I'm not good with kids. What's your life verse? I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me. Oh, really? Truth matter is that, we should pretty much strike I can't from our vocabulary when it comes to spiritual things. Yes, that's right. Just be honest. If you're going to say it, say I won't. Yep. Just say I won't. It's not that you can't. God can enable you to do whatever he calls you to do. It should either be I will or I won't. Not I can't. And yet that's exactly what Sanballat and his attack is doing. He's trying to get them to buy into the lie that they're a feeble people. We can't. I still remember when I was a kid in secular school, elementary school. I can still see the poster on my teacher's wall. And it was a picture of these cans, and it said, success comes in cans, not can'ts. Get it? And it had this picture of these cans. In other words, when you tell somebody you can't, what are you doing? Discouraging them. You're telling them what they can't do. When you tell somebody what they can do, you can. What are you doing? Oh, discouraging. And then the other side of that is encouraging. And it's just as amazing to say, you can't discourage us something. You can encourage us something. What's Sanballat telling them in a sense? You can't. What are you guys doing? You can't do this. You're feeble. You're weak. You can't. But again, we go to Philippians, and the Bible says we can do all things through Christ, which strengthens us, right? We can. If it's God's will for you to do something, you can. He can strengthen you to do it. He can give you the courage to face whatever your fear is. I mean, we quote Ephesians 1:3. God's blessed us with all spiritual blessings in heavenly places in Christ Jesus, right? Do we live like He has? No. You know? We have those things. We have everything available to us that we need. God's given us His Word. He's given us the empowerment of indwelling Spirit. We can. And yet there may come a time this next year where you face this attack of a discouragement because somebody's getting you to question your ability, which you can or can't do.
That's right.
The second attack here is questioning their security. Notice he says, will they fortify themselves? And so this one is a discouragement, but it also begins to creep into the place of fear, right? So he questions their security. Do you guys really think building this wall is going to keep you safe? Babylonians blew through it, no problem. You guys think you're going to build a better wall than Solomon built? You guys really think this is going to protect you? You guys really think this is going to make you safe? Give you security? See, all of these things are meant to get in their head and to get them questioning what they're doing and why they're doing it and if it's worth doing in the first place.
That's right.
People get that turned around all the time. The devil's good at doing that. If what we're doing here tonight, if we take God out of the equation and say, what are we doing here tonight without God in the equation, this is foolishness.
Absolutely.
You know, this is vanity. This is all for naught. You know, you could be sitting home watching somebody else talk on TV rather than me up here talking to you from the Bible. But if you put God in the equation here tonight, this is the most important thing we could be doing. You see what I'm saying? God, you add God into the equation of whatever it is, that makes all the difference in the world. I'm not trusting in this wall that we're building to keep us protected. We're trusting in God to keep us protected. But that doesn't mean we don't build a wall, right? It doesn't mean you don't build the wall, but you're not trusting in that wall. You're trusting in God to protect them. But you see how easy this is. They mock. In other words, when people mock you, they take your focus and they put it on what they're mocking you about, rather than the whole big picture. You feeble Jews, yeah, look at us. We are small in number. We don't have an army. We hardly have weapons. Look at let's start comparing ourselves to other people. See, the focus is right there on all the wrong things. Same way with the wall. You think this wall is going to keep you safe? You think this wall is going to protect you? And it gets their eyes looking at the wall. Yeah. Yeah, what is it compared to the former wall that the Babylonians destroyed? I mean, what are we doing compared to what others have done in the past? You know, yeah, what's the point? Why even build it? You see how the discouragement works like that? But it gets you to focusing on the wrong thing. When you get to the place where you start and get discouraged, understand that, number one, there's some form of deception here. Yeah. And you have to figure out what in the world that is. Right. And number two, step back and look at the big picture. Amen. Step back and look at the big picture, because discouragement comes is when we focus on this one little sliver and we believe the lie about the sliver.
Yeah.
And we don't put the sliver into the big picture. And so he gets them questioning about their security. You guys going to fortify yourself? And then he says this, the third one, will they sacrifice? Now this one begins to get into some territory that they probably shouldn't go, because now they're getting into their worship. They're getting into the worship of God. Now really all of this is an attack on the Lord, but particularly here, he starts questioning their faith, what their intention to do is. Well, you guys think you're going to start worshiping God again? And really that was part of the problem as you read through Nehemiah. In other words, the physical work on this wall needed to be done so that they could keep the Sabbath, basically. They couldn't control the flow of the merchandise and trade in and out of the city on the Sabbath. People were buying and selling and working and this and that. They couldn't close up the city, for worship. It was kind of part of the problem. So, this infrastructure was important to helping them to worship the way they should on the Sabbath. And their enemies knew this, and so really they begin to question their faith. Are you going to sacrifice? Are you going to offer sacrifices again to your God? And if they really begin to mock them about their faith and their worship of God. And, that's an attack that we see in our day and age, Churches that are trying to worship God in a way that pleases God are often going to be mocked because they're never going to be growing or be as popular as those who are trying to worship God in a way that pleases man.
Yes. Yeah.
The churches that are trying to please man are busting at the seams.
Yes, that's right.
Giving them short little psychological messages and rock and roll music and theater lighting and theater seating. There's a big show. They're not even attempting to worship God God's way, the way that pleases God. They're worshiping. They're bringing the worship of Cain. They're bringing what they want. They're worshiping God with what they want, with what pleases them. And they're more than happy to point out that if you just were like them, if you just employed their methods, if you just worship God the way we did, you could be growing too. I don't want to grow that way. I don't want to grow that way. In a sense, they question, it's real easy in this day and age, and I'm just trying to bring application. Where would anybody question our faith today? Well, people will question your faith all the time today. And they'll give you all kinds of recommendations that you can do to grow your church and make it bigger. I'm not interested in making my church bigger. I'm interested in preaching the truth. I'm interested in being salt and light. I'm interested in making disciples, whether that's many or few. That's what I'm interested in. The size is up to the Lord. My job is to preach the truth, not to grow in size. That's not my job.
That's right.
Every time Jesus began to grow in size, by the way, he said something to run the ones who weren't really following for the right reason off. Jesus purged his flock and followers. God oftentimes purges his churches as well. He does it to make them stronger, not weaker. But you see, we as Baptists have such an emphasis on numbers so many times. The devil can use that to discourage.
That's right.
They can use it to discourage the preacher. They can use it to discourage the people. Now listen, if you're a church member, you ought to be here faithful every time.
Yeah.
That's the only numbers I care about. If we have 50 church members, I want to see 50 in church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. That's what I want to see as a pastor. How many visitors we get or don't get, I don't have any control of that. You understand what I'm saying? But I know it's taken me a good while to weed through some of this myself as a pastor, but I've been told by the previous pastor of our church and by others, there's no reason Willow Grove shouldn't be running 100, 125. There's no reason Willow Grove shouldn't be run that much. And so what are you sitting there thinking? Every time you don't run that, what am I thinking? What am I thinking about myself? What am I not doing? I'm a failure. I can't even get 40. And then God finally put a stop to that foolish, discouraging thinking in my mind. But you know what? It begins to question your faith. What am I doing? Am I doing this right? You know what? If a church is preaching the truth, they're doing it right. If a church is trying to practice truth, they're doing it right. If the church is trying to hold people accountable to walk in light, they're doing it right. And the numbers and the size and the money don't matter. Anyway, discouragement comes. Notice he says this to them. He says, will they make an end in a day? In other words, he's questioning their commitment. Now, we know exactly how long it took him to build this wall, 52 days, which isn't very long when you consider building a wall around the city of Jerusalem. You know, that's pretty remarkable. But 52 days is 52 days. You know, that's nearly 2 months. And early on in this, you know, basically, when he says this, what do they think they're going to get this done in a day? He's basically questioned their commitment to finish. You know, this is going to take time. This is going to take work. This is going to take effort. And you guys are going to quit eventually because this work's going to take time. You're not going to get it done in a day, and you're going to quit. You're not committed. Now, is it true that the work was great? Yes, it was a great work. There was a lot involved in it. But was it within their ability, with God, you know, involved and God enabling them? Was it within their ability to do? Absolutely. But you see, he questioned their commitment. You know, whenever I got saved and began growing in the Lord, and the Lord began working in my heart about maybe I'd need to prepare to see what the Lord wants to do with me, you know, as far as being maybe a pastor or, you know, getting some more training. I don't know whether I'd be a missionary or a church planter or whatever I'd be, but I was open to do more. And as that began to become clearer and we began making plans to go to Connecticut, I had a relative that basically is like, yeah, it's a phase. It's a phase he's going through. It'll go away. And, well, I'm still here. Amen. And you can explain that any way you want. But I'm going to keep looking over here at Sandy Queen. And Sandy was there at Willow Grove when I was going through all this. You know, she got to probably sit in the pew and watch this change take place and me go. I left. We left. We left to prepare. And God brought us back, and I'm still preaching God's word. But see, that was a small idea, but question your commitment. It's just a phase you're going through. Remember when you really liked this car? Remember when you really liked this? Remember when you really liked that? And it came and went? Jesus isn't some type of earthly object that I'm enamored with.
That's right.
He saved my soul and got a hold of my heart and changed my life.
Yes.
Changed the direction of my life. It's not going away. But he has a way of discouraging you by questioning your commitment. Then notice what he says to them. By the way, I'll say this. I don't know how Pastor Bowman feels, but like I said to you guys before, I get discouraged. I face discouragement all the time. You know, it's something it's continually there. You know, getting victory over discouragement isn't something you do one time and it never comes back. It just keeps coming back. Discouragement can just keep coming back and coming back. So it's a constant battle against it. And I do get discouraged in the ministry. But I don't think I've ever been so discouraged that I haven't wanted to preach. You know, I've never got up in the morning and said, I don't want to preach today. I always look forward to preaching. God, you know, it's something I want to do. I want to preach. I want to teach. I want to share the truth. I always want to do that, no matter how discouraged I get. And that's always a blessing to me, that God hasn't taken that. You know, when I get so discouraged, God hasn't allowed me to get so discouraged that I don't want to preach anymore. I haven't gotten to that place of Jeremiah where I don't want to quit or I don't want to preach anymore. Or sometimes I do want to quit, but it doesn't mean I want to quit preaching. It's just you just feel like I'm done. Maybe I'm done here. But God always has a way of helping you to overcome that discouragement. Anyway, this next one here, he says, will they revive stones out of the heaps of the rubbish which are burned? And so now he's questioning their provision. He's talking about some of the materials they're using. Now, Artaxerxes, the king of Persia, gave them, certainly funds and things to be able to purchase timbers and things that they need. But the actual stones, it seems like they're picking these stones up out of the heaps of the rubbish which were burned. I mean, they're going through the old stones and putting up the old stones, and they're watching them go through this, and now they're questioning their provision. Are you going to build this wall out of garbage? Are you going to build the wall out of the garbage of the ruins that's already here? They're not bringing in all new, nice cut stones and all this kind of stuff. They're basically going through the ruins and getting what they need. And you can still, if you ever look at these pictures of Jerusalem, even today, you can see pictures of the rubble that was there from 70 AD when the Romans came through and destroyed Jerusalem. What they rebuilt has already been destroyed again already. So you can see some of these heaps there even today and get an idea of what they must have been facing. But that's a hard, there's a couple things there. That's a harder way to do it, right? If there was some type of tragedy, wind blew your barn over, it's much easier to call Brother Dale and say, hey, these are the dimensional number I need. Can you just bring me stuff and we'll throw up a new barn? Rather than to go through and pick through the ruins and try to rebuild your barn through the ruins. That's the hard way.
Right.
And you go thinking, well, why? Look at you guys. You guys going to rebuild the barn with all the ruins from the fallen down barn? And it's a way of ridiculing them. Remember, everything he's saying is mocking them. It's to mock them. It's to throw another dart to discourage. You're feeble. This isn't going to protect you. You're not going to worship the Lord again. Bam, bam, bam. And here's another one. Your provision. And so, the Lord has a way of doing that with us as well. Makes you feel like whatever you have isn't enough, or it isn't good enough, right? And sometimes this brings us into great discouragement because we get focused not on what we have, but we get focused on what we don't have.
Yes.
And that's kind of what he's saying there. And again, we have to go back to say this: if God's giving us our provision, it's enough, right?
That's right.
It's adequate. Number 6 here, questioning their purposes, the last one. Tobiah the Ammonite was by him, by Sanballat, and he said, even that which they build, if a fox go up, he shall even break down their stone wall. The idea here is questioning their purpose. In other words, if I spend my whole life building something like a wall, and I pour my whole life and effort and energy into building this wall, and at the end of my accomplishment, a fox can walk up on it and knock my whole wall down, what have I really done with my life? It's like the foolish man builds his house upon the sand, right? So what if he builds his house, and if he spends his whole life building a great house on the sand, well, if the sand shifts and the wall falls down, you're sitting there saying, well, what did I really accomplish? In other words, what Tobiah is saying here is they're building this wall, and if a fox go on it, it'll knock it down. He's basically telling them, you're wasting your time. Mm-hmm. You're wasting your time. Man, that's the one. That's the one with Christianity that'll get you. People will tell you you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
You're wasting your time coming to church tonight. You know that? You're missing the game. You're wasting your time giving money to that church down there. You're wasting your time putting these Bibles together. You're wasting your time doing this. You're wasting your time doing that. And if you focus on that, you'll begin to believe them. There's this old saying, I was a teacher and a preacher, so, don't throw a rock at me. There's this old saying, those who can do, those who can't teach. And those who can't teach, pastor. But it gives us this idea that the pastor's just the pastor, and he just can't do nothing. There's nothing else he can do. He's just a pastor. He's just pastoring because he can't do anything else. Every pastor I know had a life before they became a pastor. Every pastor I know had a life that they could be doing something else besides pastoring a church. Successfully. Making money, making a life, having something probably better. Better this, better that. You know what I mean? Every pastor I know is a capable person. They could be running a business or be an engineer or, whatever else they could be pursuing in life. They could be pursuing other things. And you better watch, because there's sometimes the devil comes along and says, what are you doing? What are you doing with your life? You're wasting it, man. You could be doing this. You could be doing that. I'm at the age right now where I'm 55 and people that I went to school with are retiring. They've worked a job. They've made a good living. They've made a good life. And they're retiring. They've saved enough money. They're going out. They're doing their thing. I wouldn't trade preaching the Word of God for that. But sometimes that's discouraging when you begin to focus on that. When am I going to retire? Never. I'm going to tell you that, never. When the Lord retires me, I'll retire. But thankfully, preaching and pastoring is a calling that can take you into, the older you get, the better you are, the more helpful you are. It's something you really mature into, you age into, and you ripen into. But see what he's doing. He's questioning them. He's questioning, what are you doing? What's your purpose? What are you even doing? It's not even worth it. You're going to get done with this, and this is going to fall down like a fox climbs on it. It's going to fall down. Wasting your life. You're not wasting your life if you're serving the Lord, guys. You're not wasting your life. And so here, the effects of discouragement were intended to attack their desire, to attack their faith, and literally to attack their heart. Now, you've heard this saying here, their heart melted, right? You hear this in the Bible, a melting heart. That's one of the phrases. There's about 4 Hebrew words that are used to describe discouragement. One of them has to do with a melting, like your heart melting as a description of discouragement. Something hindering, something shattering, something discouraging. So, to melt, to shatter, to hinder, to discourage. These are all different words that have different shades that are sometimes translated into the English word discourage, but they all have the same thing. They all ultimately affect your heart. That's what I'm trying to get at. Discouragement is ultimately an attack directly at your heart. You want to kill something, shoot it in the heart. The devil knows that. And so when he shoots that arrow at you, it's aimed right at your heart. Discouragement is aimed right at your heart, right at your spiritual heart. So we have to guard our heart, keep our heart with all diligence. We've got to make sure that we respond rightly to this discouragement. And that's what we see here as we close verse 4. Notice how Nehemiah responds to this. First of all, he says, "Hear, O our God, for we are despised." I mean, where does Nehemiah start here? In other words, I like how this goes. Sanballat is talking to his people and to his army and to others about the Israelites. When Nehemiah hears this, he talks to God. Sanballat's talking to others. He's talking to God. And so this all begins with prayer. the first response should be prayer. That's the great thing about Nehemiah. Nehemiah was one of these guys that he started with prayer and then acted. Many times what we do is we act and then we pray to be bailed out. Right? When things get finally so bad, then we have to pray. And we get it all wrong. Prayer should come first. So what's the first thing that's going to discourage? When you recognize discouragement in your life, when you recognize the devil is attacking your heart with discouragement, what's the first thing you do? Talk to God about it. Yes. Go to the Lord, and that's what he does. The second thing that helps, again, here with the attack of discouragement is the truth. This is very subtle, but notice what he says. The first thing he says is, we are despised. You know what that is? That's the truth.
Yes, it is.
That's the truth. I mean, Nehemiah sums all this up real easy. We're despised. Why are they saying what they're saying? They despise us. There's an agenda. And you begin to recognize this automatically. Remember what I told you about discouragement? The devil attacks us with discouragement, and he takes that truth and twists it into a lie. The only counter to error, the only counter to a lie is the truth. Yes. We have to ground ourselves in truth. God's given us the spiritual armor, hasn't he? This thing, what did he say? Gird thy loins with truth, right? You gird your loins with truth. Truth is so important. We're never going to counter the lies of discouragement unless we can anchor ourselves to the truth. Yes. The truth about ourselves, the truth about God, the truth about our circumstances and what God's doing and what we're trying to do. We need to ground ourselves back into truth. And a lot of times that has to do, like I said before, is when you take the step back and look at the big picture. Don't look at the piece that they're trying, one piece of your life or one piece of the problem, or one piece of your circumstances that the devil's trying to get you to focus on to discourage you. Look at the big picture. Yes, we're feeble, but God's on our side. Yes, this wall may not be sufficient to protect us, but the God who told us to build this wall will protect us. Yes, our provisions may be humble, but God can use, he's the creator, he can use anything to do anything. And so they anchor themselves to the truth. So Nehemiah prays, he anchors himself to truth, and then he has faith. He just trusts the Lord. In other words, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, I will repay. And so what does Jeremiah do? Or I keep saying Jeremiah. Nehemiah do. Notice the faith here. He says, turn their reproach upon their own head, give them for a prey in the land of captivity, and cover not their iniquity, neither let their sin be blotted out from before thee. In other words, he's saying, Lord, let them reap what they've sown. And what's Jeremiah doing in his faith? They despise us. Lord, we're going to trust you to take care of them. We're going to trust you to take care of our problem. And he prays to that end. Let them reap what they've sown. And then we see here, again, this truth. For they have provoked thee to anger before the builders. Remember that verse I told you, and we looked at already in Colossians? Fathers, provoke not your children to anger, lest they be discouraged. Sanballat and these guys, they were provoking the Lord to anger. You're not going to discourage the Lord. You can't discourage him. He's the indiscourageable, right? But they're provoking him. In other words, they begin to look and they say, if you're trying to live in God's will and do God's work and serve the Lord, and you're being attacked by discouragement, yes, they're attacking you. Yes, you're being attacked with discouragement, but ultimately, who's the one that's being attacked? God. They want to stop the work of God being done. You see that? And so behind us is God. And their problem is with God. God's going to deal with them. And so he has faith. And then we see this nice little statement. He says, so we built the wall. And all the wall was joined together to the half thereof. before the people had a mind to work. Isn't that nice and simple? He tried to discourage them from building the wall. What'd they do? They built the wall. They just kept building. They kept going. And it says the wall was joined together, but under the half there. I think that kind of gives the idea that they got the wall all put together. They got the wall all joined together, but it was only halfway high. It wasn't all the way as high as it was going to be, but it was all finally joined together. So they had met maybe a halfway point. They had met a milestone. And isn't it interesting? You meet the milestone, and there's when the attack comes, huh? But their response, they prayed, they anchored themselves in truth, they exercised faith, and then you see this idea of zeal and resolve. They built the wall. Why did they build the wall? The people had a mind to work. This word for mind is the Hebrew word lave. We get our word, English word, sounds kind of L, vowel, with a V and an E at the end. Love. How do we symbolize love usually? With a heart. Lave is the Hebrew word for heart. In other words, they had a mind to work, but what's he saying? They had a heart to work. So they got victory over the discouragement, didn't they? Sanballat took that arrow of discouragement, aimed it at their heart to try to hinder them from doing the work. But in the end, ultimately, they had a heart to do the work. And they did the work. There's more attacks coming. There's more attacks coming from Sanballat. There's more attacks coming from within the people. There's more problems to overcome. But we know the end here. The end of the story is 52 days, the wall was built. 52 days, the wall was built. We do not have to give in to discouragement.
That's right.
Because we know the end.
Right.
We know the end. If the Lord tarries and I die, I'm going to be absent from the body, present with the Lord, and I'll ever be with the Lord. He's the one I'm going to be with for all eternity. I better be living to please Him. He's the one I better worry about pleasing. If the Lord should catch us away, that's the blessed hope.
Yeah.
You know, we're in the middle of building the wall, and the Lord says, hey, I'm going to call you here because you don't have to worry about building that wall anymore. Well, that would even be better. But either way, we know the end. We know what happens in the end. We're on that same winning side that Nehemiah's group was on. Had they quit, should we quit? Please don't. Don't fall prey to discouragement. Here's the other thing I'm going to tell you this. Encourage each other. When you sit at the pew and you look to the right hand, you left, and you see the same people you know you should see service after service, that's encouraging. Don't think the pastor is the only one that gets discouraged. Faithful people in the pew get discouraged as well. And so remember to encourage each other, encourage your pastor. Not just with words, but with work, with being faithful, and all of these things. We all need it. We all need it. Your pastor is going to do a better job pastoring you if he's not discouraged. You're going to enjoy and appreciate your pastor a lot more if he's not discouraged. I know, because I think my folks like me better when I'm not discouraged. When I'm discouraged, I'm not sure how much they appreciate me because I don't know if I'm acting the way I should. So discouragement, we're going to face it next year. How are we going to respond to it?